Yo, what's up? Back with another video. We are now looking at Dan Corder and his analysis, his breakdown of what is happening between Google and the South African government. We're just curious. We just want to know. We're not informed as yet. We have half the information from the right. And now we are about to listen to somebody who's said to be a leftist, a moderate, non-racial guy who is exposing the racists. And the racists on the other side call him a fake. They say that he's a fake. They say that when Dan Corder takes off those hats at night, before he goes to bed, he caresses the apartheid flag and he looks at a white supremacist movie before he sleeps. And then in the morning, he puts on the hat and he's Dan Corder again. Let's jump into his video. We'll have a look soon at somebody who has accused him of being a fake. That is Lachlan Nicholson. In a response to Penwell the Black Pen, who had done a video saying, "Dear white people," Lachlan Nichols responded and said, "You, Penwell, your views are wrong, and the people that you are mentioning who are all inclusive, says those people are not your friends," referring to the Dan Corders.
As a white person, you can be a Kim Heller who loves the EFF. You can be a Dan Corder. You can be one of these white liberals, who sort of understand and fight for the black struggle.
One thing I should point out here is that these white liberals to whom you refer are not your friend as a black person. White liberals who virtue signal and do performative activism on behalf of blacks in South Africa or really anywhere else in the world don't do it because they understand or care about your struggle. They do it because they consider themselves better than you as people, and they think that without them acting as your white saviors, you will never achieve anything. So if I were you, I wouldn't put faith in them.
Dan, give it to us.
Journalism in South Africa is in crisis. Like basically everywhere in the world, journalists are under more threat and pressure than ever before from political, business, or trying to silence them and stop them from doing their vital work, seeking truth and defending fact-based reality for their readers and their viewers and their listeners. And that is
fact-based reality. So we are still on the whole thread about misinformation. You know what AfriForum is going and doing? If you watched the previous video with Willem Peter, if you want to live in a world with reality and truth, come here.
That is why the recommendation from South Africa's Competitions Commission earlier this week was so massive. The Competition Commission essentially recommended that Google be made to pay between 300 million and 500 million rand per year for 3 to 5 years to major South African news media houses as a degree of compensation for their own financial revenues lost through what Google has been doing with their work online. This is, at least for me, one of the most promising ways to save journalism as we move into a more and more uncertain and information-messed future. You're watching The Issue with Dan Corder. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. This is The Issue with Google versus journalism. A quick thank you to Suzuki before we get into this story. They are sponsoring this episode of The Issue, and they sponsored and blessed me with a beautiful new 5-door Suzuki Jimny that I have been absolutely loving driving around Cape Town with. This latest adventure that I did is a drive down Chapman's Peak, which a lot of people don't know about in the rest of the country or the world. This road is so extraordinary, Chapman's Peak Drive, that in most cities it would be like a star tourist attraction, but in Cape Town it's just one of many. Look at the masterpiece of engineering and the views that Chapman's Peak provides. Next time you're in and around Cape Town with some spare time, go drive Chappies. And if you can do it in a Suzuki Jimny 5-door like I did, what a treat lies in store for you. Thank you, Suzuki. And remember, we cover all of the breaking news in South Africa as it unfolds from Monday to Friday. Every single weekday morning, we have a News Worth Knowing podcast hosted by myself called Dan Corder in the Morning. You can find it on Apple, you can find it on Spotify, just search Dan Corder in the Morning. So big tech firms have nearly destroyed journalism around the world. Here's what's happened. In the old days, and by the old days, I mean even just 15, 20 years ago, the way that news media organizations made money is they sold advertising directly to advertisers. And then as the digital era came in and more people in South Africa got access to unlimited internet and unlimited information through laptops, computers, and their phones, that started to change very, very quickly, because you could now go online and for free, you could get all the information in the world, the information that the broadcasters and the newspapers used to sell you that you couldn't get anywhere else. And that immediately put massive financial pressure on the business model, the funding and financing model of news media. Suddenly, they were threatened by and competing with the whole internet and a raft of free news sources on the internet that we could use instead. And that got worse and it got worse and it got worse for those media. And now as we see newspapers closing all the time, it's frankly a miracle when a newspaper still operates. But it got even worse when a couple of enormous big tech media platforms like Google and like Meta, which is principally Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, started rolling out incredibly effective, user-friendly advertising software and advertising interfaces that basically anybody could use. Google and Meta have got incredibly good, effective data on all of their users, so they can provide you exactly the kind of person you're looking for. That's far more attractive and often far cheaper than going to, say, a TV channel or a newspaper or a radio station where they say, we don't know exactly who watches us, although we have some kind of idea about who reads or listens or whatever. That's just not as good a return on investment as Google saying, we promise you we will show you this many white women who go to a Ranitzig market and are 45 and annoyed with their second child. And so that's made it even harder for TV stations, news media organizations, even digital news media organizations, to convince advertisers to come and strike advertising deals with them directly. And it's forced them to drop their rates for adverts to try and attract any advertisers at all. And it's particularly bad for news media organizations because Google and Meta, amongst other companies, have figured out ways to provide you the news that they didn't write or research or come up with or create. So, for example, if you go on Facebook and you read 6 lines of a news story that then has an embed link to a news website, those 6 lines of the story to attract your attention may be all that you're ever going to read, and you never click through, and then Facebook gets your traffic and is able to send you advertising. The news media organization gets none of your traffic. Similarly, Google is extremely good at, when you search for a news story, providing you just enough of the details of what is within a website link on the Google search engine page that often you don't even need to click through to read an article at all. And now it's all the much worse with generative AI because Google is now generating AI answers to all of your questions, once again keeping you on Google and stopping you from clicking through to websites of news media. That means a few things. One, it means that Google is getting all of your traffic and is able to sell you ads and make money for themselves off of news that they did not create. Secondly, it means that you not going to that news media website's page, it means they don't get the numbers they used to get, the readership, and that also means that they are unable to then sell good packages to advertisers because they are not able to show advertisers bigger readership numbers. And the result of this, among some of the other factors that I mentioned earlier, is that news media is collapsing around the world. Journalists are losing their jobs. Journalists are being offered, or like news media is not able to pay journalists well enough for journalists to have sustainable quality of life careers. Journalists are being forced to create as many stories as possible because it's a quantity game. You're trying to make as many stories as you possibly can in the hopes of getting as many clicks as possible. But what that means is they're going for low-hanging fruit because they need to churn out so much work. It means that they are overworked along with being underpaid. It means that the type of story that they do changes because if you have to crunch out 8 articles in a day, it makes the quality of the investigation and the journalism way, way worse. And so news media houses are suffering, and what that ultimately means for all of us is that less truth is being uncovered and presented. Fewer facts are being defended. For us, the people, the audience who wants to know the truth about what is really happening in the world in an absolute tsunami of disinformation and misinformation and fake news. That's the crisis. And it's about the journalism, it's about the news media industry, but it's actually about all of us and our ability to know what is true and what is not.
What is true and what is not? Let's finish the video. We'll talk all about that next time.
And that's why around the world, different countries have started to try and take steps against big tech extracting the value from news media organizations' work. And in South Africa, we have
big tech extracting the local. So, Willem Petzer, it's not about some people's articles being whacked with typos or something. Everybody can type with AI. Everybody can get a nice picture and a heading. You can't suck that much, but there's something else at play. The whole platform upon which you're posting this, the whole internet, that plays there. There's a big player there called Google, and Google is not the internet itself. You should know. On the internet is the platform. Google is a competitor. Anyone who wants to put up news online is a competitor with Google. That's what's up.
Have an organization, a body called the Competitions Commission. And the commission's job is to regulate capitalism. What you need to do to make capitalism function as best as it can is to make sure there are no monopolies, so that there is competition between companies providing the same good or service, so that they try to keep the cost of their service as low as possible to outcompete others to get your business, and also to drive up the quality of their good. And so broadly, the Competition Commission in South Africa's job is to try and make sure that the balance of powers in different markets is fair, and so capitalism can function decently in South Africa. For the last 16 months, the Competition Commission has been doing an investigation to try and figure out how much money Google is making off of the work of our news media and our journalists, and how much money, how much revenue our news media has lost to Google.
Let's double speed this because I'm running out of space on the memory card. 1.5 times.
That they kind of deserve, because they've been doing the work in the first place. And earlier this week, the report came out that recommended that Google should compensate South African news media 300 to 500 million rand per year over the next 3 to 5 years. And to their best estimates that they figured out, they managed to reliably speculate that in 2023, Google made between 800 million and 900 million rands ad revenue off of the work of news media and journalists in South Africa. In the meantime, the best estimates for that, South Africa's news media was only making 200 million rand, which is an extraordinary gap. For all the work that South Africa's journalists and news media did, they earned 200 million, and Google earned between 800 million and 900 million rand. Now, Google disputes this. Google actually says that in 2022, the year before, they only made 35 million rands ad revenue off of the South African news media's work. And just intuitively to me, 35 million seems way too small, considering the extent, just to believe, considering the extent to which Google as a search engine is used to go and find out about the world, fact check, and do research on what's happening. And considering the sheer volume of news that is put out every single year, it just seems extremely unlikely. So Google is now challenging this. We'll see where it goes. The Competition Commission's recommendation could end up in a legal fight between Google and South Africa's media ecosystem, which could even involve the government in the long run. And the Competition Commission also says, well, their recommendation is that beyond the 3 to 5 years of compensation, there should probably be some kind of system created where Google has to provide 5 to 10% of the money that they make from ad revenue off of South African news media work to South Africa's news media per year forever, basically. And I love that, because that is the kind of model that is being suggested to save journalism in many places around the world, right? But if the Googles and the Metas of the world are going to continue to effectively extract all of the money-making potential out of South African or the world's news media and journalism, then we have to create a model that funds and compensates the news media and the journalists to keep journalism alive and healthy and thriving. And that money should come from the big tech companies that are taking the value out of that industry in the first place. Obviously, there are questions about how you then give out the money to different news organizations. You have to make sure that that's free of political meddling or big business compromising. But that does seem to be the most effective model going forward, because these big tech companies are going to continue to do exactly this. We see around the world these fights happening between some of the biggest names in world news media. So this is part of a wave of attempts by different governments around the world to deal with what big tech has done to journalism and done to truth creation and fact seeking in the world. And I for one, think this is one of the most important things to happen in South Africa in a long time. And it really matters to all of us as a nation where this story goes from here, whether or not this recommendation is put into practice, and how the fight between Google and the Commission's report unfolds. Thank you so much for watching.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Dan Corder, and this has been me. Like, comment, share to keep up with these news. We'll be speaking again soon. I'll see you next time.